Five, four, three, two, one. People of the world, hello and welcome to Marketing as a Foreign Language, episode 210. Our guest today is coming to us from Ontario. We were neighbors. I grew up in North Dakota. Ontario, where he's at, is about an hour and a half north of Minnesota. Not sure if you've had the joy of going to Minnesota in, say, February. But you know that Paul, our guest today, is a hardy individual. Here's the thing. Can you imagine dedicating your full-time career after having done marketing for many, many years, analytics, that sort of stuff, to teaching the next generation and helping entrepreneurs and helping marketers understand that space? Our guest today, Paul Sarkissian, is doing exactly that. He is a professor of marketing. And he also dedicated some time to helping international students. So imagine, kids coming in from India, having a hard time. It can be a bit of a culture shock. It can be a bit of a transition. He's an ebook, I believe, to that effect. And so very excited to have the one, the only Professor Paul Sarkissian on the show today. Paul?
Excellent. Thank you very much. Appreciate that intro.
So you've dedicated your life now, we'll go back, to students, to the young people of the world. Tell me about that.
The students that I currently teach and have had them over the last 10 or so years after the career change. So in the marketing space for about 14 years or so and making that transition. And I've really witnessed, and I know that in America, it's very similar to what's happening here, where there's a huge flow of international students that are making the trek to North America for an education, for a new life, for opportunities. And from that time when I started in 2011, I just saw that it was a spike of those international students. More of the percentage of the classroom was filled with them. So there's great learning opportunities. And for myself personally, I greatly, enjoy learning new things about new cultures. When I first started in 2011 in a college in Brampton, Ontario, so there's a large Indian population there. And there were a couple of students, same last name, sitting together, a couple of female students at the front. And I said, "Oh, you must be sisters." And they started laughing. And it's like, "No, we aren't." Later, Kaur is a very, very popular name in India. And there's, very many of them. So after that, I dedicated some time learning some things about India. And, from that point on, it was just, learning as much as I could so that I can, in turn, provide the best possible education, because it's all about relationships. We talked about that, and they don't really care about what I know as before that I care. So I wanted to make that connection, and that was huge.
Mm-hmm. Now, over the past year, you've had to go by way of internet, as the rest of the world has. To what degree do you think universities are going to pivot and remain online?
That's a great question, and that we're currently, experiencing with the colleges in Ontario. Actually, a collective negotiation that'll take place over the summer, and it's given union an opportunity to try and figure out, how much extra are we doing, and what does it mean to be teaching online. And I got micro credentials are having a really big impact, and so that's something that the colleges are looking to explore as well. There are so many, especially in digital, how many different credentials are available from, and HubSpots of the world. When we're looking at, situation, I think the strength is the physical, the relationships we have in person. And there are certain students where they sort of need to come in and we're all there together. I do miss that part, even though we can get together online, you're not quite sure what's happening on the other end. And talk to colleagues, like students are doing all sorts of things, driving, getting their tires changed, and it's just, using that time, right? They've got devices in their hands and they're using that time, trying to multitask. So that's understandable. But from my perspective, I'm looking to recreate having those relationships online. And so I did a bunch of reading to figure out what I can do. And really it boiled down to making yourself known. Students have to, the personality needs to come out. Over the last year, I've used more emojis and exclamation points than I have for, like my life before that, just to get the process. And I wasn't naturally, sort of to that degree, but I wanted to show, how welcome they are. And we're in this together, upbeat. It makes a huge difference, as social beings, we're really having an opportunity to influence each other, and it's what others also sense and feel. So that's been a big part of it. I do think online will stick around and it'll gain in popularity. And I thought especially in areas maybe of continuing where somebody's working full time, they can't necessarily come in to the classroom, they've got obligations, that would be perfect for them. But at the same time, I think for those who can dedicate the full time and they do want to come into the class, interact, then that works. So I think we'll see both, living in harmony together to some extent.
Caroline, thanks for throwing that emoji in chat. So micro credentials. I have worked with folks in the past where the list of micro credentials is biblical. Where they're just Google Analytics certified, Google Ads certified, Facebook certified, Photoshop this, Illustrator that, blah, 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 And honestly, I would rather see that than University of wherever. Now, that being said, the University of wherever tends to have a different personality. It's tough to describe the difference. So folks that have a college degree tend to be the more type A, get it done, ambitious, let's go, right? Fill in the blanks. But folks that don't and have that laundry list of micro credentials, I see the same thing. So, I mean, it's tough to me. If I had to give a blanket statement, I would say that the value of a college degree, from my perspective in my industry, right, of digital marketing, is less valuable than it was 5 years ago, less valuable than it was 10 years. Like it's decreasing in its value. And the reason is because I want to know if you have a successful Instagram page. I want to know if you've actually developed a website. Show me your portfolio of websites. Now, if you go to the college and it helps you do that, then great. You go to college and you take a WordPress course, you've developed 4 different projects. They're getting 100, 200 visits a day. Fantastic. You've run Google Ads campaigns, you've run Facebook ad campaigns, you've run LinkedIn ad campaigns, graphic design, you have a portfolio of graphic design on top of your ability to do these other things, then we're good. But there is a definite shift in regards to like the sanctity of a college degree insofar as internet marketing. Now, attorneys, yeah, you got to get a law degree. Dentist, you got to go ahead and do that. So it's different in this particular industry. So what would you say that the colleges are doing to prepare the kids that are studying? Can they get an internet marketing degree? Digital marketing, is that an option nowadays?
So we offer a college certificate.
Okay.
And so it's a 2-year program. And so that's what they get. And typically, in different colleges where I've taught, you'd get someone, let's say, with a BA in history or English from one of the main universities, and they're thinking to themselves, what am I going to do with this? And then somebody tells them, hey, why don't you get into marketing? And then they'll do a 1 to 2 year graduate certificate, which I think is an awesome combination
Oh,
for them.
graduate certificate.
Because as you know, with the the graduate certificate, and it's really from the perspective of you need to develop content. So the language is important, but we're learning the techniques and the tools. We don't really have the time to spend, let's say, 2 years on trying to get someone up to speed on the language side of it. And so that's why I think it's so good for, students, graduates of history and English who want to try something new, who are really into marketing. And, that lends itself well, I find, to be very successful. But Kellen, that's awesome. What you were saying about the portfolio, that has been on my mind recently. And next month, when I start the new semester, I'll be mentioning that to my students right away, because basically your company, that's the type of company they want to work for. And so it's coming straight from an owner who needs these skills. And that's so valuable.
I'll talk to your students. Yeah, if you ever want me, I've done guest appearances at universities before too. Yeah, happy to swing by and chat with them. They can ask me whatever they want. Awesome. Yes, So I see a resume, and I'm looking for. Typically, you have a graphic designer that can maybe halfway develop a decent website. You've got a web designer who can maybe do a little bit of graphics. But there's a bridge between that world, graphic design and web design, and Google ads, Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads. So, and the people who say, oh, well, I can do SEO, I can do Facebook ads, I can do Google ads, and I can develop websites, can't, in my experience, to the degree that we would need them to. So it's usually like, well, I ran an SEO campaign for one company. It's like, well, we have 47 clients. You'd be in charge of 24, and they're all disparate industries, right? So you've got an attorney over here. You've got a cat groomer over there. You got a self-storage unit, a massage therapist. They're very different. And then, the argument is, but I understand the core of it. It's like, trust me when I tell you, the breadth is really important. And so, I don't know, internet marketing it's such a huge, for example, our Google ads person, that's all he does. He doesn't do Facebook ads. He doesn't do LinkedIn ads. Like, he just does Google ads. And he's good at it because he's focused in on it. But yeah, to help your students, there's no better advice I can give than literally just starting an entrepreneurial project today. Go to GoDaddy. Do you know how to host a website? Have you ever done that? Have you ever purchased hosting? You know what I mean? So go host the website. Go build a WordPress, not a Wix site, not a WordPress website. Try to start an e-commerce. Install Yoast. Try to sell something. Try to sell something online. See if you can do it. Try to write some blogs. Get your Instagram page up. Do a business page. That's what I would do if I was a professor. If I could wave my magic wand and be a teacher. I would do a course specifically on a project. That's it. We're just doing a project, and I'm just here to help you with that project.
That's actually awesome. With the capstone project class that I teach, the final semester class, that's exactly what we do. So I love that. Definitely looking forward to your input on that. Getting them started and delivering something, to a not for profit or a small business in the area.
Oh, can they do it for their own stuff though? Can they do a capstone project for something they want to sell where they make money, or do they have to do it for someone else?
I do have an option for that, actually, where if they want to start their own venture, they can. Nobody's taken me up on that yet, but I think that would be very cool. Sell something.
I'll come preach. Get me in your class. I'll preach to them, because you have to, how many failures are you going to have before you succeed? 7, 9, 11. You know what I mean? Like, I literally have had 2 businesses that have made money, and every other thing I've done to which there are probably like 8 other ones that just all failed, and they need to know that. It's like, you crash and burn now, dude, for sure. Crash and burn while you don't have kids. Crash and burn before, that college, you got to pay back that student debt, crash and burn before you got a mortgage. This would be the time to do it. Okay, well, I would be remiss if we didn't try to get a little bit of backstory to better understand how you got here. But before we do, so we kind of have a decent understanding of the fact that you're a digital marketing professor. It's very cool what you're doing. Prior to that, what was the job? What were you doing?
Shortly after I graduated from university, I kind of fell into entrepreneurship. So I was a partner at a marketing research data collection company.
Mm-hmm.
And this was something where I didn't, have a job. I was kind of looking around, and a high school friend of mine said, "Hey, do you want to do this?" And it's kind of amazing because we were both involved in marketing research early on in high school. I was like an interviewer in a phone room. And so we were familiar with it. He got into it more full time. And then he had the opportunity to actually buy out the recruiting division of this marketing research company. So they didn't want to deal with the call room anymore. And they had a database of people who were interested in participating in projects. So that basically came his way. He asked me if I wanted to help him out for the summer. I came back and I was at home, and it's like, sure, let's do something. And then it basically went into, hey, be my partner. Let's do this. And so that was my first entry into entrepreneurship and the first taste of it. And so that went on for 7 years actually. And I can relate to the successes, the failures. And then I bought him out with my wife actually. So that was a whole new type of experience. That's a whole new episode, getting into business with a partner. Mm-hmm. And then that went on. It carried on for about 7 years, and there was a lot of pressures from clients. Of course, you're very well aware of it. Doing it faster, doing it cheaper, and there's various things happening with online recruitment. And so we decided to wrap things up in 2010, and here I am in the new career.
Okay. So when you say market research, I don't understand what's happening. There's a phone room full of people calling, asking to do polls, to gather data for companies to understand like what soap they like. I mean, what are we asking these people?
Yeah, exactly. That's it. And one of the biggest things we had to fight against was sort of that perception of telemarketing. So we weren't selling or promoting anything,
right?
But we were working mainly for clients who subcontracted us. So let's say, there's, the Gallup or, Harris, large research firms, and they're contracting out the field work. They do the analysis. So we were sort of responsible for finding the right people, either for focus groups or for, large tests where they showed commercials. All that is online now. Or we did surveys, and it ranged from banking to travel to healthcare, government, private sector, small, medium, and large organizations.
So folks, large companies, it sounds like, because if you're a small company, you don't need some massive data pile, about your product. You can't afford it, even if you wanted it.
Yeah,
are interested in people's reactions to a commercial, for example, that like those sorts of focus groups. Or give me an example of a client and what they wanted you to do, because I've never lived in this world.
Yeah, that's it. Our bread and butter at the time was actually the copy test. So we'd get 100 people in a room, and our client actually had a facility. And let's say, back in the day, one of the big clients that we worked on behalf of was Labatt. So they tested profusely with 19 to 24, 19 to 29-year-olds when they were launching, new commercials. And this was back in the day where, they were selling a lot of that beer. And now, of course, it's shifted. It's really interesting to see where that's kind of flatlined or declining, that traditional beer. But that's essentially what we did. We got, 100 guys in the room, and they would give their opinion on the commercials, the music, whether or not they knew that that was specifically for that particular client, where improvements can be made, and so on. And then at our facility, we had focus groups of, say, 8 people, and they were responsible for checking out, let's say, storyboards at the initial stages and giving their feedback on whether or not this would be a great storyboard for, a local Tim Hortons. So that's our kind of, the version of Dunkin' Donuts up here. And they want to launch a new breakfast deal, And so they're running it by their customers to figure out whether or not it's on the right path and they're doing it the right way.
I mean, that's Fortune 500 stuff, Fortune 1000 sort of mentality of, you know what, we may have some brilliant minds in our organization, but until we get feedback from the end user, do we really know?
That's exactly it, Kellen. Yeah, you got it. And you're right. As a small business, it's very hard to afford when focus groups are, $5,000 plus a pop. The average small business can't even think about it. So you're right. We did have a lot of large businesses. They've got the money for it, and they were basically doing it as a gut check to make sure they're on the right track.
Wow, fascinating stuff. Yeah, it's interesting to me that more small businesses don't do impromptu sort of do DIY focus groups. You know what I mean? It's just not, it's a big business mentality. I can't remember ever doing that. I mean, communicating with our clients, we're just trying to keep our clients happy, just running around trying to service them. And I think it's interesting because I wrote a book, and in the book, the thesis is that everyone advertises all the time. When the baby comes out, it cries, that's its first advertisement. It basically says, I need something, and you get all your needs met just by crying. And we all do that. That's how we, that's how we start this game. And the crying has to evolve over time, right? So you get older, you can't just cry. If you're 10, but everyone's like, yeah, okay. The crying doesn't work anymore. But as a young business, you just cry. You're like, well, I need business, help me. And then like a couple people like, fine, throw you a bone, and then you kind of get started. But I'm reminded, like these Fortune 5,000, Fortune 1,000 companies, they're grown. You know what I mean? They're like, 55, 60 years old, not quite retired, but they have such a sophistication to their process that their advertising it's so profoundly in depth that I wonder if small businesses could take something from it with limited resource. Does that make sense? So if I own I do own a small business. So what is the small business equivalent of that world that you lived in? What can a small business do? Just get 5 or 6 of their clients together and just ask them some questions? I mean, walk me through how you would do that as a small business owner.
Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head there with the opportunity. It's been on my mind for a while. How do you get that guerrilla marketing research approach, that lean research approach for small businesses who might be able to spend $1,000, but they can't spend 5,000. So what I would recommend, and it's really about avoiding the pitfalls rather than taking the proper steps as per a formal marketing research process. So what ends up happening is, if you're talking to 6 or 7 clients, which is a good thing, do that, figure it out, but also understand, is this a good representative sample? And is this the kind of client you want? And if you're branching out, do they represent that type of average customer? And if not, then you might have to actually talk to prospective customers or suppliers or employees. And I would just caution, I would say the biggest thing is, especially with focus groups, and we saw this at the previous college that I worked at, I saw it. You have a bunch of focus groups, you come out of it and you say, look, here's what the focus group is saying, this is what we need to do. But the fact is, you can't, or you shouldn't really make yes and no decisions based on focus group, because there just isn't enough people there. And you might have fans there, or you might have people who just don't like you and they're saying no, they're having a bad day. If you do a bunch of them, you've got a better idea. But if you're only doing one, it's basically exploratory, introductory, it leads you to other research. But I think getting out there, talking to folks, talking to customers, talking to prospects, that gives you a really huge idea of, what's wrong, or, prospective products or services to offer.
Yeah, I remember sitting down with folks and saying, hey, what would you like from us? Because I'd read some book or whatever, something got in my noggin to do that. And their answer was always, you tell me, I don't know. Like, I'm not, like, aren't you supposed to be the expert? Aren't you supposed to be the guy who knows stuff, about marketing? And I'd always have to be like, well, here's what I would do, And so in the service-based industry, I think it's a little different. Like if you're Carl's Jr., it's easy to be like, would you guys like a fish sandwich? If so, would it be spicy? Like it's very easy to be kind of like, what would you like? What would you not like? What's going to sell you on that product? Because people like food. You know what I mean? They know what they like and they know what they don't like. In a service-based industry like internet marketing, it's, you got to put your guru cap on. People throw that word around all the time, like, oh, he's an internet marketing guru. And it's like, bro, for some reason I don't like that particular phrase, because it kind of it boxes me into like, that's it. Like my entire life is just internet marketing. Like, no, I'm a father. I've got so many other interests. I'm not just, I don't walk around all day, every day. And it's so funny to me that there's all these personalities online that are just trying to convince you that that's it. They're like, oh, I am a savage when it comes to marketing and I make all this money. It's like, okay, enough already. But anyway, I do need to get a little bit of your life story, because we just went right into the stuff. Real quick, where were you born? And give me a childhood story.
I was born in Toronto, Canada.
Okay.
My parents were immigrants, and so it was great opportunity to come to a new place, and they took that. My grandparents were here as well. And an early experience that I had was not in Canada, but in Egypt, where I was by the pyramids, about to ride a camel, about 5 years old, and this huge head, the camel head, comes down and snorts at me. And I could not stop crying.
Oh.
That just scared me. And that's probably my earliest childhood experience.
Wow.
It just, it scared me, ingrained in my mind,
right.
Decades later. But, I enjoy travel. I would say, as, young person growing up, I did travel, getting new experiences, new cultures. Toronto's a very multicultural place, so you experience different ideas and people that you wouldn't normally cross paths with in your own circle. So I think that really broadens one's perspective. I was grateful for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny to me that it's easy to forget as an adult how huge adults are when you're a child. Yeah. And when you're 5, they tower above you. They are these demigods that just walk, these titans, and they're scary. Adults can be really scary when you're a young kid. Just the size discrepancy is crazy. And then a camel is gigantic. It's a monster. It's a monster, that thing. And then here comes this camel head, coming at you. So yeah, I can definitely see that. And it's so funny to me as we progress through life, how these touch points, they're like walls, almost little barriers in our mind, these paths that create over time and just mold us as human beings. But no, you cannot be a teacher and be afraid. They can smell it.
That is true.
The students can smell it a mile away. If you're not confident and you're not like, let's go, and I'm leading this. So an early story of overcoming fear, right? And then entrepreneurship is overcoming fear, and teaching is overcoming fear as well.
Yeah, you got that. Especially early on, you get your challenges, and I'm sure you've seen that. You're not that confident. You don't have your sea legs. And I enjoyed being challenged by a student. It doesn't happen as much anymore, but the first couple of years I actually did enjoy it. But it can be a little rattling, especially if you're not quite sure, because it's one thing to know your stuff and work in your business. It's another thing teaching. So trying to marry those two things becomes somewhat of a challenge at the beginning. But with experience, with failure, I have to say I learned more about myself during the first 5 years of teaching than, I would say the last 20 years. It was a huge journey for self-discovery for myself, knowing my strengths, my weaknesses. You're just out there in the open. And then after you've taught for a few years, 95% of the time, you know how the class is going to turn out. But that 5%, something can happen, right? And you still have to be ready. There was one instance, just one quick example, teaching marketing research in a class. And all of a sudden, a female student starts bawling her eyes out in the middle of the class. And it's like, okay, this isn't something you usually experience. And thankfully, another student kind of took her outside. And then later it's like, her boyfriend broke up with her, text message from China and broke up with her. And she was just devastated. And it's like, well, what do you, there's no real handbook for that, and it's all about, we're people. I had to learn that students are coming into that classroom. They might have been fighting with their spouse or their friends, their boss. Maybe they got fired. Maybe they can't meet rent this month. And I figured out, it's not about me. It's really about them. And if they're kind of giving me the hairy eyeball, it's not because, I've done something wrong, but it's, they've got 1,000 other things on their mind, right? Like really important stuff. Like life is happening when they're in that classroom. So just trying to appreciate that, I think, went a long way.
Yeah. Ram Dass, one of my favorite spiritual leader type characters, has a documentary called Becoming Nobody, which is relevant. I think it's just really letting go of all that and going, you know what? Because students don't understand just how haggard and tired and bored they look. They don't have any idea. Because when you're sitting there in class, you're just kind of like, okay, here I am doing whatever. Yeah. But a sea of that is what the teacher sees. It just, you see like 3 people paying attention, 75% totally just checked out. And then like that dude's sleeping, he's literally snoring. And you're like, bro, you got to wake up. And
that's it.
And then you have to, it's funny too, because I love, there's this guy, TD Jakes, who's this preacher. And I've been picking up on a lot of his style. I've been watching his YouTube videos, but he'll just be like, he's like, I know I'm talking to somebody, but I don't know who. I know I'm talking to somebody. It's like, if someone clap the hand, well, can I get an amen? Like, can I, because when you're up on stage, you're like, hello, anybody. Is anybody home? Is anybody listening? And so you do have to evolve. You have to be an entertainer. You got to be a counselor. You got to be able to like bottle up your own stuff. Right. Yes. I mean, that's one of the things about being a teacher is it's literally, I was having the roughest day. I was teaching at the time and I called my mom because I was just like, I'm about to quit. I'm done. This is just, I was so upset. And I couldn't believe what she said, but she said, suck it up. She said, you don't have a choice. You have to get back in there. You got to suck it up, at least for now, right? You can fall apart later, but suck it up, get in there and go teach. And I did. And I didn't expect her to say that. I expected like, it's going to be okay. And that sort of, she's like,
How that?
Yeah. Have you ever had to suck it up in class, Paul? Have you ever had a day?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That's something that I think is a major learning point for all of us. Even if you don't feel like it, it's got to get done. It's an important job. And usually after a while, you kind of get into it. But there definitely are times when you're just standing there, not feeling it and thinking to yourself, you're not in the mood. We're humans, right? As teachers, and we're feeling things too. And it's really important not to let it affect the relationships, not to affect the classroom. That the patience and just holding back. I know some teachers may, say something maybe out of turn, and you can't take it back once you say it. So it's that's right. I find it's easier. It's easier to stay focused, do the time, and really, the next class will be better. They'll be better.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, go home and fall apart.
Not in class. That's right.
Go at your car. Go at your car. Exactly. Fall apart in your car. Ladies and gentlemen, marketing is a foreign language. 10:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. YouTube.com/Send It Rising is the easiest place to find it. If you're watching the show like most folks do after the fact, we love you too. iTunes, Spotify, many other podcast platforms. You can watch the show. We're going to need many, many more interviews with Paul to even scratch the surface. But this was a good one. I want to make sure that Paul gets the last word.
Appreciate it, Kayla. Thanks very much. Enjoyed the conversation, and look forward to continuing the dialogue.
Do you want to give them any contact information where they can reach out to you if folks want to say hi?
Yeah, sounds great. So on social, LinkedIn is the place where I'm most active, and they can check that out, Paul Sarkissian, and look at some of the things that I've been working on. And what's on my mind lately is trying to support small businesses during and after the pandemic. I've got an article there you can check out as well on how to be successful in your small business during and after the pandemic.
Yes, sir. That's Paul, Paul Sarkissian, S as in snake, A as in apple, R as in Ralph, K as in kiss, ISS as in kiss, IANSARKISSIAN. That's Paul Sarkissian. Check him out on LinkedIn. You know you want to. Thank you all for swinging by the show today. That is it for now. Bye-bye.